Have you ever felt like you're smiling on the outside, but bleeding on the inside, as if no one around you can see the invisible weight you carry every day? Maybe you get up, live your routine, talk to people, but inside you something is broken, something that human words cannot describe. There are wounds that do not leave marks on the skin, but scream in the silence of the soul. Wounds that hide behind "everything is fine," but that, at night, make you cry in secret. And the most painful thing is to think, does anyone really see me? Does God see me? Most people never realize this, but today you will. There are pains so subtle that we learn to live with them as if they were part of our identity. Pains such as constant anxiety, an inexplicable fear of the future, a sadness without an apparent cause, a guilt that insists on returning, even when you have already asked for forgiveness. These wounds do not heal over time. They don't disappear on their own, but there is a truth that almost no one talks about. A truth that has been ignored by many, but not anymore. Because today, Jesus speaks to you, and he speaks directly to your pain, to your anguish, to the deepest place in your heart, the one that you don't even have the courage to show to others. Jesus did not come just to deal with what is visible. He came to heal the wounds that no one sees. And this message is for you who are tired of fighting alone, trying to be strong when everything inside you is falling apart. You didn't get here by chance. Jesus brought you here for a reason, because it's time for you to break free. Throughout this video, something will change inside you. Not because the words are beautiful, but because the presence of Jesus is in this place. He knows every hidden tear, every unanswered prayer, every muffled scream in the pillow. And he wants to show you that there is a way to heal what no one sees and walk in freedom with him. Get ready. Take a deep breath and open your heart to this message, because what you're about to hear could transform the way you see your life, your pain, and even God's love. This is not just another word, it's a date. An encounter with the one who can free you from the inside out. And if this message has already started to touch your heart, click the like button so that others can also be blessed. Because yes, your like can be the instrument that God will use to reach other people who, like you, need this urgent healing. Now, breathe again and get ready to dive into a truth that goes beyond logic. Because when Jesus speaks to you, even the deepest wounds begin to heal. You are not alone. Maybe you arrived here feeling a knot in your chest, a restlessness that is difficult to explain, as if something was missing from you, as if you were trying to breathe underwater. But there is a bigger reason behind this. You're not here by chance. Jesus brought you to this video for a reason that goes beyond logic. There is something he wants to say directly to your heart, and if you are willing to listen sincerely, this may be the answer you have been waiting for a long time. Jesus speaks to you, and he didn't choose the wrong time. He knows exactly what you are up against. He sees what no one else sees. He understands the pain that no one else understands. And before continuing, take a deep breath and allow yourself to feel this message. Because this is not just another video about Christian spirituality, it is an intimate journey of emotional healing, spiritual liberation, and re-encounter with the living presence of Jesus. Now, if this message is already touching your heart in some way, write in the comments, "I trust in Jesus." Your comment could be exactly the push someone else needs to continue. Remember, when you share faith, you plant hope. And if you feel like God is calling you to something greater, click the like button now. It just might get this word out to another hurting soul who needs just that today. Healing the wounds that no one sees is a profound process. But Jesus is here, and he will speak to you in ways you may have never experienced before. Get ready, because what comes next may change how you understand your pain, and it could be the beginning of your liberation. And speaking of silent pains, there is one of them that consumes the heart from the inside without showing signs on the outside, and it has been the cause of many departures from true peace. Let's walk through this story together, because Jesus wants to reveal something you need to hear now. Martha was surrounded by tasks. The sound of the pots hitting, the dust on the floor rising with the hurried footsteps, the mind filled with 1,000 thoughts. The house needed to be perfect, the details impeccable, the dinner on point. After all, Jesus was there. But in the midst of so much rush, there was something that Martha didn't understand. Her heart was more full of concerns than of presence. While Mary sat at the Master's feet, listening to his words with an open and serene heart, Martha was lost in an inner turmoil. She was too busy to realize that what mattered most was already within her reach. Jesus, looking tenderly, said, "Martha, Martha, you are restless and worry about many things." Luke 10:41. That phrase crossed the walls of your home and now reaches the walls of your heart, because maybe, like Martha, you are also trying to handle everything. The obligations, the expectations, the weight that the world puts on your shoulders. And in the process, your soul has been tightening day after day. And even surrounded by people, you feel like no one notices this anxiety that consumes you inside, like a silent flame that burns without making a sound. You wake up with your heart racing, as if you were late for something you don't even know what it is. You look at the clock, but there never seems to be enough time. And in the midst of so many commitments, so many demands, there is a void that insists on growing. Your mind doesn't stop. Thoughts run like wild horses unleashed, trampling your peace. And perhaps, in the midst of your routine, you even try to seek a moment with God. But soon the cell phone notification, the work reminder, the responsibility for the house or the children steals your attention. And so, another day ends. And that peace you so desire seems increasingly distant. Martha was doing nothing wrong in human eyes. She was serving, he was donating. I was being responsible, but there was something deeper going on. She was trying to resolve the outer chaos with human effort without realizing that true healing lay in the stillness of presence. And Jesus did not rebuke her harshly. He called her twice with love. "Martha, Martha," as if to say, "I see your rush. I see how hard you are trying, but you don't need to drown in this. I'm here. Sit with me." Maybe this is what Jesus is trying to tell you today. You are restless, you are anxious, but only one thing is necessary. What Maria chose: presence, the voice that soothes, the look that heals, the silence that frees. Because while the world demands that you always be on the move, Jesus invites you to stop, resting, listening, to trust. And in this rest, a peace that surpasses understanding is born. A peace that does not depend on external circumstances, but springs from the encounter with Him. If this message is touching your heart, tell us in the comments, "I need the peace of Jesus." Your comment could be the encouragement someone needs today. You can be the spark that rekindles hope in someone who is on the edge of emotional exhaustion. And perhaps you have learned to live with this anxiety as if it were part of your identity, as if it were part of your name, as if you are anxious by nature. But Jesus did not create you to live in internal war. He didn't call you to just survive, suffocated by invisible demands and pressures. He called you to live, to breathe, to be. And that starts when you choose to stop, when you say, "No more. I need Him." Because it is not in noise that He reveals Himself, it's in a whisper. It's the moment you leave everything and simply sit at His feet, like Mary. This is where anxiety loses its strength. This is where fear loses its voice. It is there that the heart beats again in the rhythm of eternity. Martha thought she was pleasing Jesus by being so busy, but what He really wanted was her presence, her delivery, her attention. And that's what He wants from you today. If this word touched your heart deeply, click the like button so that others can also be blessed. Your like could be the instrument that God uses to reach another exhausted soul who today needs this invisible healing. And here comes the most amazing part of this story, because Jesus doesn't just calm anxious hearts. He also touches the wounds of loneliness. And when you discover how he responds to the pain of abandonment, everything inside you can begin to change. He wasn't just a patient, he was an outcast, an invisible one, a man who, in addition to the physical pain of leprosy, carried within himself the rejection of an entire society. Couldn't touch, couldn't be touched. He lived on the margins, among caves and silences, listening to echoes of a world that no longer belonged to him. He had no name for people, just a label, leper. And when everyone looked away, he decided to do something unthinkable. Get closer, breaking the barrier of fear, surpassing the border of "I can't." He fell at the feet of Jesus. The words that came out of his mouth were no ordinary request. They were a desperate cry from someone who had already lost everything except their faith. "Lord, if you want, you can purify me." Luke 5:12. And at that moment, something extraordinary happened. Jesus didn't just look at him, Jesus touched him. Stop for a second and think about this. Jesus touched that man. The touch that no one dared to give, the gesture that religion prohibited, the act that society feared. Because for Jesus, the pain that no one sees is more important than the appearance that everyone judges. Jesus' touch wasn't just physical healing, it was emotional redemption. It was restoration of dignity. It was living proof that no one is forgotten, not even those who have been pushed out of it all. That man was not just cured of an illness, he was healed of a label. From a silence that screamed every day, "You don't belong, you're not worthy." Perhaps you who are here now identify more than you think with this leper. Maybe you have felt this way too. Left aside, ignored, forgotten in your pain. People look at you, but they don't see what's broken inside. You try to smile, you try to move forward, but there is a part of you that feels abandoned by everyone, and sometimes even by God. But Jesus speaks to you. He sees what no one else sees. He sees the whole of you, even when you try to hide your emotional wounds. And he doesn't back down from your pain. He doesn't avoid his imperfections. On the contrary, he approaches, he plays, and that touch changes everything. If this message is touching your heart, tell us in the comments, "Jesus touched me." Your comment could be the reminder of faith that someone needs right now. Maybe someone is on the verge of giving up, and your words are exactly what will rekindle hope. It's powerful to think about this. While the world creates distance from our defects, Jesus uses our wounds to attract us. What you try to hide is exactly where he wants to touch. And it doesn't matter how many times you've been rejected, how many doors have been closed, how many people have told you you weren't enough. Jesus does not repeat these voices. He silences them all with a gesture, one touch. Look, and "I see you," said in silence, but felt deep in the soul. And when he touches, he transforms, not just what's outside, but what's inside, because there are rejections that leave invisible scars. There are words spoken in the past that have become emotional shackles, but when Jesus enters, everything that imprisoned you begins to lose its power. And you may wonder, why do I feel so alone, even when I'm surrounded by people? It's because there are pains that the world cannot heal. There are solitudes that not even the closest company fills. But Jesus, he doesn't just come to fill, he comes to inhabit. He enters the places you yourself fear to visit. It cleanses the wounds you thought were incurable. He gives you back what pain stole, the right to be loved, to be seen, to be touched. You are not what they said you are. You are not the mistake you made. You are not the scar that was left. You are a son, you are a daughter. And Jesus today is extending his hand. Take a deep breath and allow yourself to believe again, because most people never realize this. But today you are realizing abandonment is not the end of you. It can be the place where God will start something new. Because there is a truth hidden in that silence, and it can change everything. And here comes the most impressive part. Because if you thought solitude was difficult, wait until you see what happens when the fear of tomorrow starts to steal your peace. What you are about to hear will change the way you see the future. The wind was blowing strong. The waves crashed violently against the boat, throwing water everywhere. The disciples were there, men accustomed to the sea, but who were now dominated by something more powerful than the storm: fear. It was as if the world was falling apart before their eyes, and in the midst of that chaos, Jesus slept. This scene is one of the most impactful in the Bible because it talks about something that, at some point, we all feel. The feeling that we are on the verge of shipwreck while God seems silent. In Mark 4, we see the disciples seized with panic. They try to control the boat, row against the current, keep everything upright, but nothing works. And when there was no longer any way out, they shouted, "Master, do you not care if we perish?" Jesus' answer comes in the form of authority over the chaos. "Why are you so timid? Do you still not have faith?" Mark 4:40. And then the wind stops, the sea calms down. The storm ends with a single word, but what about storms that aren't made of water and wind? What about those that live inside us? Anxiety about tomorrow, the fear of not being able to pay the bills, panic when faced with a diagnosis, the insecurity of losing someone, the terror of failing, the constant fear of the future. The truth is that we all have a type of storm. And sometimes it is so intense, so unpredictable, that it seems like God is sleeping in the middle of the chaos. But Jesus speaks to you today. He is in the boat. Even when everything seems to get out of control, even when logic screams that it is the end, he remains present, silent perhaps, but never absent. How many times have you caught yourself thinking, what if nothing goes right? How many nights slept poorly? How many decisions were postponed out of fear? How many opportunities were lost because panic paralyzed you? There is a type of fear that paralyzes more than any physical prison, the fear of what hasn't even happened yet. And this fear has a subtle power to distance us from God, to rob us of hope, to transform entire days into anticipations of tragedy. But there is a secret hidden in this story, and few know this truth. Faith is not the absence of the storm. It's the conscience of whoever is in the boat with you. If this message is touching your heart, comment right now, "Jesus is in my boat." Your comment could be exactly what someone needs to read right now to keep them from giving up. Don't underestimate the power of a statement of faith. She can turn someone's fear into living hope. And more than that, if you feel that this word is speaking to your soul, click the like button right now. This isn't just a click, it's a leap of faith, a gesture that can carry this message to others who are facing the same storm as you. Your like could be the instrument that God uses to bring peace where today there is only fear. It is curious to realize that Jesus did not calm the sea immediately. He let the disciples feel the force of the wind, the threat of the water, the weight of panic, because there are learnings that are only born in the midst of chaos. There is faith that is only strengthened when the ground disappears. There is trust that is only built when everything falls apart. Accept the presence of Jesus, and it is at this point that transformation happens, when fear stops being your captain and Jesus takes the helm. You don't need to understand how the miracle will happen. You just need to trust that He is there. And if He is, then you will get through it. It will cross. It will reach the other side, because Jesus doesn't get into a boat and let it sink. He enters to lead to the purpose, but that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed, and it involves not only the fear of tomorrow, but also the mental exhaustion of those who can no longer silence their own thoughts. What follows will show you that even the most tired mind can find rest in the presence of God. Elijah was tired, but it wasn't just physical tiredness. It was something deeper. An exhaustion of the soul. He had faced kings, prophets of Baal, multitudes, had been used by God in powerful ways, and yet he felt empty. Fleeing into the desert alone, he lies down under a juniper tree and says something that few have the courage to say, "That's enough, Lord, take my life now." Yes, even the prophet who called down fire from heaven reached the point of wanting to die. because there are times when the mind simply can't take it anymore. These are the days when thoughts run like a whirlwind, when the internal pressure becomes unbearable, when the noise inside your head is louder than any scream outside. And maybe in some way, you identify with this. Maybe you are experiencing this mental exhaustion. You get up, do what needs to be done, talk to people, but inside you feel like your nerves are on edge. The thinking doesn't stop. The body is standing, but the soul is on its knees. And the most painful thing is that no one sees it, because your pains are invisible. You learn to hide it well, disguising it with smiles, with jokes, with productivity. But when night comes and silence falls, it's as if everything that was repressed during the day comes to the surface, and you no longer know how to deal. And here comes a truth that few know. Even God's most faithful servants have moments of exhaustion, and this is not a lack of faith. This is humanity. Elijah was tired, and God knew it. And the divine response did not come with a sermon, nor with a judgment, came carefully, with sustenance, with rest. An angel touches Elijah and says, "Get up and eat, for the journey will be very long for you." 1 Kings 19:7. In other words, God did not ignore pain. He paved the way for recovery. If this message spoke to your heart, comment right now, "Jesus sustains me." Your comment could be a leap of faith that inspires someone else who is feeling just like you, on the verge of emotional collapse. You could be the sign she prayed for. How many times have you believed that you needed to be okay all the time? That you couldn't stop, you couldn't show weakness, that it was wrong to feel what you're feeling? But Jesus speaks to you. You don't need to be strong all the time. You just have to be willing to rest in Him, because there are struggles that cannot be won with effort, but with surrender. And perhaps it is precisely now at that point where you feel like you can no longer continue that God wants to renew you, not through grandiose miracles, but through small gestures, a touch, a word, a moment of silence in His presence. Because sometimes what we need most isn't answers. It's relief. It's knowing that we are not alone in the midst of our mental storm. Take a deep breath. Allow yourself to feel this message. Maybe you've never stopped to think that even your tiredness is seen by God. That even your agitated mind is important to Him. That even your thoughts, the ones you never had the courage to say out loud, are being welcomed now. And no, He is not judging you for feeling this way. He is offering you rest. Elias didn't need to pretend that everything was fine. He was honest with his pain, and it was there, in that desert, in that moment of total vulnerability, that he was visited by God in a way he had never experienced before. And here comes the most surprising part, because what happens next will challenge what many believe about spiritual strength. There is an encounter that changes everything, and that shows that God's presence is not always in a bang, but often in a whisper. And what you're about to discover will change the way you view your own weakness. The courtyard was cold. The dawn enveloped everything with a piercing silence, and the sound that broke that moment wasn't voices. It was the rooster crowing, a common song in a common place. But at that moment it became the sentence that would forever echo in Pedro's soul. He had promised. He had firmly said that he would never deny Jesus. But there he was, broken, ashamed, suffocated by chest-crushing guilt. 3 times, 3 chances to confess your faith, 3 failures, and then Jesus' gaze catches him. Not a look of condemnation, but a look that pierces the soul. Luke 22:62 says, "And when he went away from there, he wept bitterly." Pedro fell apart inside, not just because he was wrong, but because he disappointed the one he loved most. That's what guilt is like. It does not need a crowd or visible punishment. It eats away from the inside. It's the kind of pain that no one sees, but that screams in silence every day. Guilt remembers scenes, repeats words, relives mistakes that you have already asked for forgiveness 100 times. It's like an invisible prison where you are the defendant, the judge, and the jailer. And if you've ever felt this, if you've ever lived through days where you can't forgive yourself, then this message is for you. Because Jesus speaks to you, and what he says is not, "I condemn you," but "I meet you." Peter's story did not end in denial. She had a new beginning on the beach when Jesus himself appeared to restore the man's identity. He didn't say, "Why did you betray me?" but "Do you love me?" 3 times. The same number of times it was denied. 3 questions, 3 chances for redemption. Each one of them erasing a guilt, healing a wound. If this word touched your heart, comment right now, "Jesus restores me." Maybe someone will read this comment and feel the courage to seek the forgiveness they have been avoiding for so long. Perhaps your testimony is the spark of hope someone was waiting for, to not sink deeper into guilt. Maybe you are still carrying past mistakes, words that hurt, decisions that hurt, things I wish I could go back in time to undo. But Jesus is not calling you to live in the if. He's calling you to live in the now, and now begins with grace, with mercy, with restoration. The same Jesus who looked at Peter that night is the same one who looks at you now, and he doesn't give up. He doesn't cancel. He doesn't define you by your failures. He calls you by name, and do you know why? Because he already knew everything. Even before you made a mistake, he had already prepared the reunion. Because that's what his love does, rebuilds where you only see ruins. Take a deep breath. Allow yourself to feel this message. You are not your mistake. You are God's choice. Peter denied it, but he was also the first to run to the empty tomb. It was he who preached on the day of Pentecost. He was the one who got up even after he fell. And it shows that the fall was never the end. It was just the place where grace began. Maybe you are at this exact point in your story, the place of pain, shame, regret. But Jesus speaks to you. Get up. The story isn't over yet. The reunion has already been scheduled, and he is already on the way to restore you. And what comes next will touch even deeper areas, because it's not just about guilt, but losses that no one understands, from pains that are so intimate that you can't even express them in words. Prepare your heart, because what is coming will change the way you see grief, the absence, and even the presence of God in the midst of pain. The house was silent, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the kind of silence that only mourning knows. Maria was prostrate on the floor. Martha tried to hold back her tears, but her despair was greater than her strength. Lazarus, his brother, was dead. 4 days had already passed, and when Jesus finally arrived, there seemed to be no hope. The pain had won. The absence had spoken louder. Martha, in tears, ran to Jesus and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." John 11:21. What she was saying was not just a lament for loss, but a silent accusation of abandonment. It was the cry of someone who trusted, waited, and didn't see the miracle happen in time. How many times have you felt this? That bitter feeling of having prayed with faith, but still, something was lost. The pain of waiting that became absence. The trust that was being eroded by God's silence. The mourning that is not only for what died, but for what could have been. That relationship that ended before forgiveness. That dream that never got off the ground. That person who left without you saying everything you felt. Sometimes the most painful loss is not the physical one, but the emotional one. It is the feeling that God arrived too late, and at that exact point in the soul, where everything seems dark and lifeless, Jesus speaks to you. John 11:35 brings us one of the shortest and at the same time most profound phrases in the Bible. Jesus wept. He did not weep because he did not have the power to raise Lazarus. He knew the miracle would come, but he cried because he felt the pain of the one he loved. He allowed himself to suffer with those who suffer. This changes everything, because our Savior is not indifferent to our grief. He's not far from our tears. He enters the tomb of our pain, walks to the bottom of our valley of losses, and says in a firm voice, "Take away the stone." Even when everything seems dead, he still believes that something can live again. Maybe you are there with your heart in pieces, thinking that there is nothing left to restore. Maybe you buried something that is still in God's plan to resurrect. Maybe your grief doesn't need an immediate miracle, but a Jesus who cries with you today, and he is there by your side. Don't rush your process. Not lessening your pain, but staying, wiping away every tear, preparing the right moment to say, "Lazarus, come out." If this message touched you deeply, comment now, "Jesus is with me in grief." Sometimes, just by declaring this, something inside us starts to move. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to be strong. You just need to believe that even in the silence, he never stopped seeing you. And here comes the most amazing part of this story, because the journey of grief doesn't always end with a literal resurrection, but it always ends with transformation. Because when Jesus enters, he changes the environment, changes the climate, changes the heart. He is the only presence capable of bringing life where there was only loss. And maybe, just maybe, the next step you will take will not be with a heavy chest, but with hope in your eyes. Because where Jesus speaks, even death loses its power. He lived among the tombs. The sound that came out of his mouth were not words, but screams of pain. Nobody could contain him. Chains and handcuffs were useless. He broke them with a strength that came not from life, but from desperation. His body was injured, his soul in pieces. He was naked, isolated, possessed by legions of demons, experiencing an inner chaos that no human being dared to face. Most didn't even come close. For many, he was just another lost person. Another one that wasn't worth it. But then, Jesus arrived in that land. And it wasn't by chance. He went through a storm just to find that man. Because when Jesus speaks to you, not even the thickest darkness prevents his arrival. What happens there is more than an exorcism. It is a reconstruction of identity. Jesus doesn't just cast out demons, he returns dignity. The text in Mark 5:15 reveals the result. And they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man, sitting, clothed, and in his right mind. 3 details that change everything. He was settled, that is, at peace. Dressed, that is, covered with honor. In his right mind, that is, free in his mind. This shows us that Jesus not only came to free the spirit, but also to heal the mind, clothe the soul, and restore emotional balance. Now stop for a second and reflect. How many times have you also felt like this man? Chaos inside, a racing mind, disorganized thoughts, feelings that tear you up inside, but that you can't put into words. That feeling that even surrounded by people, there is an invisible prison inside you. Nobody sees, nobody understands, and little by little you accept this pain as part of your identity. But Jesus is saying today that doesn't define who you are. The presence of Jesus brings order to inner chaos. And this order is not imposed with force or demand. She comes with a touch of compassion, with a look that sees you beyond your wounds. The Gadarene man was known for his screams, his chains, and his insanity, but Jesus saw beyond that. He saw someone who needed to be restored, and the most impactful. After being healed, that man wanted to follow Jesus, but the Master gave him a mission: return to your house and tell everything the Lord has done to you. What was shame became testimony. What was a prison became a ministry. If this message spoke to you, comment, "Jesus, bring peace to my interior." Because maybe you're smiling on the outside, but fighting internal voices that no one imagines. Jesus knows each one of them, and he has authority over them all. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because there is a secret hidden in this story that few realize. Jesus went through a storm, faced spiritual opposition, and went to an area where no one else would go for a single person. This reveals how much you are worth to him, even if everyone avoids you, even if the world tries to label you as uncontrollable, useless, or too lost. Jesus sees you. Jesus chooses you. Jesus speaks to you. And when he speaks, even the most tormented mind finds rest. Thomas was there, among the disciples, but absent of faith. While everyone spoke with emotion about the resurrected Christ, he remained silent, carrying a weight that many hide, the difficulty of trusting again. He didn't want to doubt it, he just couldn't believe it. It was as if the trauma of the cross had emptied his hope. The death he saw with his own eyes seemed to have also killed his ability to believe. And when someone says, "Jesus is alive," Thomas responds, "Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands, and put my finger in the place of the nails, and put my hand in his side, I will not believe him." John 20:25. It's not a rebellious phrase, it's the cry of a wounded heart. How many times does the fear of being disappointed again stop us from trusting? Maybe you've trusted before. He gave his faith sincerely, believed in promises, expected changes, but what came was silence. It was a loss, it was pain. And the wound is still there, like the mark of the nails, reminding us of what didn't work. And now trust seems too risky. Trusting seems synonymous with getting hurt again. But the most beautiful thing about this story is that Jesus doesn't rebuke Thomas. He comes back just for him. The resurrected Christ did not appear in majesty. He did not require blind faith. He showed his hands. He showed his injured side. He revealed himself through the marks. Because Jesus understands that sometimes what we need most to believe is to see that he also bled. Put your finger here and see my hands. Do not be unbelieving, but believing. John 20:27. This speech is not scolding. It's an invitation from someone who knows the fragility of our hearts, from someone who knows that at times even the most mature faith falters. And it is at that moment that Jesus speaks to you. I am here. Touch my wounds. I do not hide from your fear. I understand you. And suddenly, the same Thomas who doubted is the one who makes one of the greatest declarations of the Christian faith, "My Lord and my God." John 20:28. It was Jesus' vulnerability that awakened Thomas's faith. It was his loving presence, not the imposition of belief, that cured his doubt. And here comes the most impressive moment. Jesus ends this scene with a beatitude that spans the centuries until it reaches you. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. John 20:29. This is not a criticism of doubters. It is a gift for those who, even in the midst of uncertainty, choose to continue believing, even when you don't feel it, when you don't see it, when you don't understand it. Jesus speaks to you now, in that space between doubt and faith. He doesn't require perfect trust. He just wants a sincere heart. If you are in that place between wanting to believe and not being able to, write in the comments, "Jesus, strengthen my faith," because your struggle does not invalidate your journey. Your questioning does not cancel God's love for you. And if your faith seems weak, remember, even Thomas, with all his unbelief, was found by Jesus. This isn't about you being strong all the time. It's about him never giving up on you. And here comes the part that will change everything. Jesus didn't appear first to those who had the most faith. He showed up for anyone in need, because that's what he does. He doesn't look for the perfect ones. He looks for the wounded, the frustrated, those who are afraid to believe again. And if today you feel like you've believed too much and that nothing has changed, know this: the same one who showed his hands to Thomas is now showing his heart to you. Don't give up believing, because Jesus speaks to you even when you can't speak to him. Zacchaeus watched from the top of a tree, hidden among leaves and branches, like someone who didn't want to be noticed. And indeed he wasn't. To the crowd, Zacchaeus was just another sinner, a tax collector, someone who had sold his soul for Roman coins. But what no one knew was that behind that appearance of control, there was a deafening emptiness, the kind of void that money can't fill, the kind of loneliness that hides in a crowd. He didn't climb that tree just to see Jesus. He went up because, without even realizing it, he was desperate to be seen, not with the eyes of condemnation, but with the eyes of mercy. And then, among so many faces in the crowd, Jesus stops. Look up. Call him by name. Zacchaeus, come down quickly, because today I want to stay at your house. Luke 19:5. That's what changes everything. It was not Zacchaeus who found Jesus. It was Jesus who found Zacchaeus, high in shame, in an attempt not to be noticed, in the illusion that it would be ignored as it always was. And suddenly the greatest pain he carried, that of not feeling loved, not by God, not by anyone, is broken by the voice of the one who came to call the invisible by name. Now think, how many times have you felt like Zacchaeus? Isolated, rejected, with the feeling that even surrounded by people, no one really sees you. The pain of not being chosen, of not being valued, of always being the last to be remembered. Or worse, being remembered only for the mistakes you made, for the flaws you carry. But Jesus speaks to you now, and he is not bound by what they said about you. He doesn't look at labels or the past. He looks straight into your heart. Because where the world sees failure, Jesus sees purpose. Today there was salvation in this house, Luke 19:9. Not because Zacchaeus changed to deserve it, but because Jesus entered, and where Jesus enters, everything begins to be restored. What was a symbol of betrayal is now a sign of transformation. And once again, we are reminded that Jesus does not wait for you to be ready. He comes to meet you just the way you are, because healing begins the moment you let him in. Enter your story, in your chaos, in your dark room, in the most hidden part of your soul. And here is what few realize in this story. Zacchaeus quickly came down from the tree. He couldn't resist the call. He was not afraid to receive Jesus, and that perhaps is the greatest teaching of this moment. When Jesus calls you, the most powerful response is not perfection, it is surrender. He doesn't demand an explanation, he wants communion. He doesn't expect you to be blameless. He wants you to say yes. If this message spoke to you, comment now. Jesus sees me. It may seem simple, but this comment is an act of faith, a silent scream saying, I'm still here. I still hope to be loved, and the good news is that you already are, without needing to climb any tree, without needing to prove yourself. His gaze has already found you. And the most surprising thing, while others were judging Zacchaeus from the outside, Jesus was already restoring him from the inside. And that is the deepest healing, the one that no one sees, but changes everything. Because when you discover that you are seen by God, truly loved, accepted for who you are and not what you do, then you can finally walk in freedom with him. Because freedom doesn't begin when everything around you changes. It begins when you believe you are loved, even if nothing around you says so. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. The way home never seemed so long. His clothes were torn, his feet were dirty with dry earth, and his heart was crushed by the weight of failure. He had nothing left, not even the name. Not the inheritance, not dignity, just memories, too painful to bear, and an inner emptiness that throbbed like an open wound. The prodigal son had sought freedom and found prison. He exchanged his father's love for the illusion of independence. But what hurt most wasn't the loss of riches. It was the memory of who he was and the shame of what he became. And then the question arises that perhaps also resonates within you. Is there still a way back for me? The answer begins to reveal itself in that simple yet explosive verse. While he was still far away, his father saw him. Luke 15:20. There are not enough words to describe the impact of this scene. The father, every day, looked at the road, waiting. He hadn't forgotten. He hadn't given up. His love was not conditioned on performance or behavior. He just wanted his son back, and when he sees him, he runs. Not to charge, not to accuse, but to hug, kiss, and restore. And this gesture breaks something deep. Break the belief that failures do not deserve new beginnings. Break the lie that God only loves the victorious. Break the cycle of guilt that holds so many hearts. How many times have you felt like this son? Defeated by his own decisions, too far to go back, too dirty to be accepted. Maybe you're surrounded by people, but you feel like you're in a desert, an emotional desert where everything seems dry, without hope. You look back and see mistakes, unfulfilled promises, and a path full of regrets. But Jesus speaks to you now, and he's not asking what you did. He's saying, I'm still waiting for you. No matter how far you've gone, there's a Father watching the road every day, waiting to see your heart take that first step back. And when that happens, there is no hesitation. The Father doesn't ask for explanations. He interrupts his son's guilty speech with a party, new clothes, and a ring on his finger. Do you know why? Because to God, you were never defined by your mistakes. He doesn't see you as the failure you believe yourself to be. He sees you as a son. It was always about that. It's not about merit, it's about identity. The prodigal son didn't come back to conquer a place. He came back to occupy a place that never stopped being his. And that is the power of grace. It doesn't just forgive, it restores dignity. If this message is touching your heart, comment now, I am a son, because declaring this is breaking with shame. It's saying that you are not the sum of your failures. It's reminding your spirit that you have a Father who runs to meet you. And perhaps this statement will inspire someone who is lost to also begin their journey back. Your comment could be the encouragement someone needs today. But there is one final detail in this story that we cannot ignore. The eldest son, the one who stayed at home, who followed all the rules, but didn't understand his father's heart. He found the forgiveness unfair, rejected the restoration. And maybe you at some point felt that way too, invisible, even though you were faithful. Seeing others receive grace while you struggle in silence. But Jesus speaks to you too. He says, all that is mine is yours. Sometimes the greatest miracle isn't coming back from a mistake. It's discovering that you never stopped being inside the Father's house, even when you thought he didn't see you. And here comes the most impressive part of this story. Both what was lost and what remained needed the same revelation, that the Father's love is not about merit, it is about belonging. It doesn't matter if you're turning back or trying to stand firm. Jesus wants you to know. He still runs to meet you. But this is just the beginning. What comes next may open your eyes in ways you never imagined. The scene is dense, tense, silent, but full of charged energy. An averted gaze, a closed face, clenched fists. This is how Cain appears, right after God had joyfully received his brother Abel's offering, but rejected his. On the outside, it just seemed like jealousy. Inside, there was a dull fury, a whirlwind of feelings that Cain never learned to name. He was hurt, not by divine injustice, but by the comparison he made within himself. A silent anger was growing, but it didn't come out of nowhere. It came from a pain that no one saw, from a frustration that he never confessed. And then God asks a question that still echoes today, especially in hearts that live in internal war. Why are you angry? Genesis 4:6. This question has the power to disarm any mask. Because God does not accuse, he investigates. He doesn't shout, he probes. He doesn't move away, he approaches. And the most impressive thing is that he did this before the tragedy. Before the blood spilled, before the guilt that would come like an avalanche, God in his grace tried to intercept Cain's emotional breakdown with a question, why? And that's a question you might need to hear right now. Why does this anger grow inside you? Why this constant irritation with people? Why this desire for control, this impulse to defend yourself all the time, this fear of being diminished? Maybe like Cain, what you feel is not just anger. Perhaps it is an unlived grief, an unspoken injustice, an expectation that was never fulfilled. Anger is just the surface of something deeper: abandonment, rejection, fear of failure. And what is most tragic and most common is when these unresolved wounds become weapons. This is what happened to Cain. The pain turned to fury. Fury turned into action. And when he realized it, he had crossed a line he could never undo. But here is the most powerful point of this story. Even after the mistake, God still talks to him. Yes, after the murder, after the blood, after the scream in the field, God asks, "Where is your brother?" And it's not because God doesn't know, it's because he wants to give Cain a chance to speak. God is like that. He gives opportunities even to those who have already failed. He keeps calling, even when the heart is full of resentment. If this word touched something that is hidden in you, write in the comments, "Jesus, heal my anger." This small gesture can break emotional chains that you have been carrying for years. Not because it's magical, but because it's sincere. And when we are sincere, heaven responds. God does not expect perfection from you. He just wants access to what is locked away. And perhaps that is the key. Recognizing that the anger we feel against others is sometimes just a reflection of our pain with God, from our frustration at not having been seen, chosen, recognized as we thought we deserved. But there is a cure. There is redemption. The same God who confronted Cain is the one who confronts you today, not with punishment, but with a healing question. Why are you angry? It's as if Jesus speaks to you now, sweetly, but also firmly, asking you to come down from this place of bitterness, because he knows as long as you feed this anger, you don't live. You only survive, and in constant tension, repressed anger becomes a prison. But Jesus wants to set you free. He wants to exchange this weight for lightness, this lump in the throat for breathing, this reaction for reconciliation. And it all starts when you decide to look within and say, "Yes, I need healing." Because true freedom is not being right. It's about having peace. And here comes the most surprising part of this journey. Jesus is not afraid of your anger. He doesn't move away from his inner hurricane. He enters it. He sits with you in the middle of the emotional storm and in a calm voice says, "I'm here. Let's deal with this together." He doesn't want to punish you. He wants to transform you, but that's not all. What is about to be revealed will show you that even in the deepest emotional darkness, there is a light that never goes out. The scene takes place in the dark silence of a crushed heart. Job, once the most righteous man in the East, now lies in ashes wrapped in physical pain, but even more torn apart inside. Your dead children, his possessions destroyed, your health compromised, friends who accuse more than they comfort, and a sky that remains silent. Job does not blaspheme, but he also does not hide his agony. He doesn't hide his confusion. Don't try to appear strong before God. He asks, he screams, he cries. Why was I born? Why didn't I die when I came out of the womb? Why is light given to the wretched? Job 3:11-26. These are questions that pierce the soul. Not just his, but everyone who has ever walked in the shadow of intense emotional pain. And here is the depth of this story. Job does not suffer because of his sins, as everyone imagined. He suffers because there is an invisible plane, a spiritual reality beyond what the eyes can see. This should make us wonder, what if your suffering is also connected to something much bigger than you can understand right now? What if this pain that seems so senseless is actually a stage for future revelation? What if, in God's silence, there is a plan being woven, not against you, but for you? Job's pain is the pain of someone who looks inside and no longer sees light. It is the emotional darkness that cannot be cured with motivational phrases or religious cliches. It's the kind of pain that no one sees, but that consumes you inside. And maybe you are exactly at that point, without the strength to pretend, tired of trying to explain what you don't even understand. There is a name for this: invisible suffering. But there is also a hope that does not depend on explanations. I know that my Redeemer lives, Job 19:25. This phrase, spoken by Job in the midst of chaos, is like a ray of light cutting through the densest darkness. He didn't say that at the end of the story, when everything was restored. He said in the middle of the valley, At the height of pain, no guarantees, no promises that everything would return to normal. He declared because, even without answers, he trusted in the character of God. This is mature faith. This is surrender. This is hope that survives the dark night of the soul. If this message resonates with you, comment, "I trust in my Redeemer." This act is not small, it's powerful. Because there is someone reading the comments right now who needs that courage to continue. Your silent testimony can rekindle the flame in another's soul. Often we wait for a light at the end of the tunnel, but we forget that there is a light within us, and it is called Jesus. He is the light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness does not overcome it. He does not ignore the valley. He walks with you through it. Today's Jesus speaks to you may not come with explanations, but with presence, with company, with tears that he also sheds. And that changes everything, because sometimes healing doesn't begin with the solution, but with presence. And Jesus did not abandon you. He is in the middle of the gray with you. The silence that seems cruel can be full of purpose. The delay could be part of something that will change you forever. Job did not receive immediate answers, but he was transformed. And you will be too. Because where pain seems irreversible, grace is irresistible. But that's not all. There is a revelation hidden in the crowd that will remind you that you have never gone unnoticed in the eyes of God. The crowd advanced, hurriedly, pushing, crushing, each one trying to get closer to Jesus. It was chaos of bodies and haste, but in the midst of that confusion, there was someone invisible, a woman forgotten, silent. 12 years ago, he suffered from a hemorrhage that no one could cure. Suffering is not just physical, but social, emotional, and spiritual. According to the law, she was unclean. I couldn't touch anyone. It couldn't be touched. I could not worship in the temple. He lived on the margins, isolated, as if she were already dead while alive. She was the portrait of the pain that no one sees, the weight of shame that no one carries with you. And that day, she decided to risk everything. Because she no longer wanted to exist unnoticed. She didn't have the voice to scream, but she had the faith to play. And that touch changed everything. If I only touch his clothes, I will be healed, she thought. And that's what he did. In the midst of the crowd pushing Jesus from all sides, she touched him with faith. And at that moment, something supernatural happened. The flow of blood stopped, but something bigger happened. Jesus stopped. In the midst of so many people, he felt that touch, a different touch, a touch of faith, a touch of sincere despair mixed with lively hope. And he asked, "Who touched me?" The disciples found the question absurd. Everyone is touching you, but Jesus knew. He always knows, because to the world, you might be just another face in the crowd. But to him, you are the only one. He feels it when it's you. The woman kneels, trembling, and confesses everything. Perhaps he expected a reprimand. But hear what her soul has longed for all her life. "Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace." Mark 5:34. He didn't call her sick, not even unclean, not forgotten. He called her his daughter. And in that moment, she was not just healed in body, it was restored in the soul. The invisible label has been ripped off. The ID was returned. Shame was replaced by dignity. The touch that everyone avoided, Jesus turned into an encounter. How many times have you felt this way? Ignored, forgotten, as if no one sees how much you are fighting inside. You walk through crowded places, but carry an immense emptiness. Perhaps you have heard many voices telling you that you are worthless, that your pain doesn't matter, that you won't be heard. But Jesus speaks to you, and what he says is, "I see you. It doesn't matter how long you've been suffering. No matter how much they tried to make you believe that you are invisible, Jesus sees what others cannot see. He doesn't ignore your pain. He feels. He stops everything just to look at you. Your sincere touch, even if shy, moves his heart. If this word spoke to your heart, comment, "Jesus sees me." It may seem simple, but it is profound. There is power in declaring that you are no longer on the sidelines. Your comment may be just what someone else needs to read to remember that they are not alone either. And here's the most amazing thing. Jesus doesn't just want to heal you. He wants to restore his identity. He wants to call you his son. From a daughter, he wants to take you out of the crowd and bring you to the center of his heart. He wants you to know that you are not living in the shadow, because there is light shining upon you, a light that no one can turn off. When the world calls you nobody, Jesus calls you by name. When society rejects you, he welcomes you. And when you think you are slipping away in silence, he responds with love. But that's not all. The next story reveals how even comparison can be an invisible prison, and how Jesus frees us even from the need to prove ourselves. Pedro looked at João. Again, always him. It was as if, deep down, I still needed to compete for a place alongside Jesus. The same Peter who had denied, cried, been restored, still felt tempted by comparison. They had just experienced the greatest miracle in history. Jesus had risen, the impossible happened. And yet, instead of focusing on the call he had received, Peter was still looking at the other person. Lord, what about this one? He asked, pointing to John. Jesus' response was direct, liberating, and necessary. What do you care? You follow me. John 21:22. A firm call, but full of love, as if to say, Peter, the focus is not his path. It's yours. Look at me. And how many of us got lost in that same movement? We know we have a mission. We know we are called, but we look to the side, comparing our backstage to other people's stages, measuring our time with someone else's clock, questioning why so-and-so has already achieved it and I haven't yet, why my journey is more difficult, why does my healing take longer, why my prayer has not yet been answered. We forget that the Lord is personal, and that what he has for me is different from what he has for you. But it is not less, it's just unique. Comparison has the power to turn off the light that God has placed in us. It distracts us, frustrates us, paralyzes us. And the enemy knows this. It plants subtle seeds of insecurity. You're late. You're not as good. God doesn't use you like he uses others, but Jesus speaks to you. And today, he says again, what do you care? You follow me. In other words, stop looking around. Look at me. The comparison only makes sense when we take our eyes off our Creator. Maybe you're feeling insufficient because someone else seems to have arrived faster, conquered more, grown more. But you don't know that person's process. She doesn't know the pain she faces in silence. She doesn't know what God is dealing with her. And most importantly, it's not about her. It's about you. God will not judge you for someone else's mission. He will look at what you did with what he entrusted to you. If this message spoke to your heart, comment, Jesus, I choose to follow you. Declare this as a positioning, a freedom from comparison. Your value does not come from the performance of others. It comes from God's gaze on you. And he calls you by name, with purpose and grace. There is something liberating about walking with your eyes fixed on Jesus. When we stop measuring our journey by that of others, we begin to see beauty in our path. We see that the curves, the valleys, the deserts, everything has a reason, because he is shaping us, because he wants more than to take us to a destination. He wants to transform us along the way. Peter learned this. He went on to be one of the church's greatest leaders, not because he was better than John, but because finally he understood what it was to follow Jesus with his eyes on the Master. And here comes the most amazing part of this story. When you understand that you don't have to be like anyone other than who Jesus called you to be, you find rest. You stop running for acceptance and start walking with purpose. Comparison screams, you will never be enough. But Jesus whispers, in me you already are. And that voice, that's the one worth following. John walked behind Jesus, silent, discreet. And Peter, who had just received a personal call from the Master himself, could not resist and asked, Lord, what about this one? Jesus' response was not aggressive, but it was firm like a sword that cuts the root of disguised pride. What do you care? You follow me? John 21:22. The phrase fell like lightning into Pedro's soul and echoes to this day in the hearts of so many who get lost looking at the path of others. This seemingly simple moment exposes one of the sneakiest wounds of our time: comparison. Comparison silently robs us. She doesn't shout, but whispers lies that sound like truth. You're late. You are not enough. You're not that talented. You will never be like so-and-so. And with that, without realizing it, we start to measure our spiritual journey with the ruler of others. And the most dangerous? We do this even in the presence of Jesus. That's exactly what Peter did. After everything he experienced, the miracles, the deep repentance, the restoration with the eyes of Christ, he still compared. Today, perhaps you are living in this same invisible prison. You are serving, seeking God, but your heart is heavy from seeing others seemingly walking faster or receiving more blessings, and that hurts. Because it's subtle, because you pray but you question, God, why hasn't it come to me yet? And deep down, what you want most is an answer that calms this anguish of seeming to be falling behind. But here is the liberating truth. Jesus speaks to you. And when he says, you follow me, he is saying, I have a unique plan for you. Trust. This comparison is the root that stifles contentment. It takes us away from gratitude. It makes us blind to the miracles that are already happening around us. Because when you look at your neighbor's grass too much, you forget to water yours. And the worst, you begin to doubt God's love for you. But what if I told you that this doubt, this feeling of being forgotten by God, is the same one that prevents you from listening to what he has said? You follow me. It's not just an answer. It's an invitation, a rescue, a reminder that you are neither late nor early. It's in God's exact time, on the right clock in heaven, because following Jesus is about faithfulness, not comparison, about constancy, not speed. And the most powerful? When you finally take your eyes off others and focus on Jesus, your journey gains color, gains peace, gains meaning. Maybe you're not seeing the fruits yet because you're trying to grow in the wrong soil, the soil of comparison. But the good news is that today you can change that. Now, here, with a decision to look to the author and finisher of your faith, he who began the good work is faithful to complete it. In your time, at your pace, his way, with grace. If this message spoke to your heart, write in the comments, Jesus, I trust in your path for me, because sometimes all you need is to stop running sideways and throw yourself forward into the Master's arms. Your story will not be written by likes nor by comparisons. It will be written out of obedience, by faith, by delivery. And here comes the most impressive part of this story. The same Peter who compared was the same one who later led with courage. It was he who stood up boldly at Pentecost. He was the one who healed, preached, impacted. Why? Because he understood Jesus' answer. He stopped looking at John, and he started looking at the cross, his, Christ's. And then the sky began to move through his life, and the same will happen to you. When you stop comparing yourself and start trusting, because what's next doesn't depend on who's next to you. It depends on who's in front of you, and if it's Jesus, then you're on the right path. The cell was dark, damp, stuffy. The walls, dirty and cold, offered no hope. Chains bound the ankles. But that wasn't the hardest weight to carry. What hurt most in Paul and Silas was not the steel of the shackles. It was the injustice. They had been flogged without guilt, convicted of freeing a woman from an evil spirit. And now, not knowing if they would see the sun again, they were there, trapped. But then something unthinkable happened. Instead of lamenting, they sang. Instead of despair, praise. And the scriptures record this moment with powerful simplicity. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God. Acts 16:25. It was as if the sky opened inside the prison. And what happened next? changed everything. Many people today live inside invisible prisons, emotional prisons that do not have iron bars, but have walls of guilt, shame, trauma, abandonment. And even though they are free on the outside, they feel chained inside. Paul and Silas's praise in that dark moment was not just an act of faith, it was a spiritual weapon, because when you worship in the midst of pain, hell shakes. The soul chains begin to weaken. But the question that screams in your heart is, how can you praise when everything inside you is broken? Jesus speaks to you, and he says your arrest is not the end of your story. Paul and Silas's praise didn't just free them, it freed others around them. Because when someone decides to praise in the midst of pain, the atmosphere changes. And perhaps you are asking yourself, but how can I sing if I don't even have the strength to pray? The truth is that praise is not about a beautiful voice. It's about delivery, about recognizing that, even without understanding, God remains God. Even without seeing the way out, he continues to be the way. But what if I told you that what imprisons you today could be the same place where God will show you the greatest liberation in your life? Because that prison wasn't an end, it was a stage, an altar. And sometimes God allows the dark environment not to punish you, but to position you. He wants to show you that there is freedom even with chains on your feet, because true freedom doesn't start from the outside. It starts from within. That midnight represented more than an hour of the day. It represented a moment of decision, whether they wallowed in self-pity or they threw themselves into the presence of God. And they chose to sing, and it was in praise that the earthquake came. Yes, God shook the foundations of the prison, but it was the praise that activated the miracle. This is so powerful that it needs to echo in your soul today. When you praise, even in silence, the sky moves, and the enemy loses. If today you feel emotionally trapped, unable to move forward, wrapped in pain that no one understands, breathe. And sing, even if your voice is weak, even if it's between tears, because praise doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be true. Jesus is with you in the cell. And if he is there, that already changes everything, because he doesn't go into places to leave you the same. He comes in to free, to restore, to transform. And here comes the twist that few expect. The jailer who kept them imprisoned was the first to convert. He who locked the doors was the first to open his heart. This means that your pain, when given in praise, can generate life in those around you. It's not just about you. It's about God's purpose in you. If this message spoke to your heart, comment now. Even in prison, I choose to praise, because true praise is that which is born in the valley, not on the stage. And when he rises, the sky responds, and the chains, whatever they are, begin to fall. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. She cried in silence, like someone who had already lost the right to hope. Anna was not just sterile in the eyes of others. Inside her she carried a hope that had already become chronic pain. Year after year, same routine. The temple, the prayer, the anguish. While other women proudly showed off their children, she walked with an empty belly and a crushed heart. With each provocation from Penina, with each indifferent gesture from those who did not see her struggle, Anna withered inside, until one day, with teary eyes, something different happened. She prayed to the Lord and wept abundantly, 1 Samuel 1:10. But it wasn't just any prayer. It was a soul pouring. Anna did not recite ready-made words. She poured out what no one else could see, and God heard. Have you ever felt like your wait is too long? That despite praying, the doors remain closed and heaven seems silent? Anna knows this place, that of prolonged waiting, where the soul screams and the body gets tired. Maybe you're waiting for a response that doesn't arrive, a sign, a relief, a change. But he only finds silence and tears, and then the voices of discouragement arise. Maybe God has forgotten about you. But what if I told you that Anna's waiting wasn't wasted time, but rather preparation for something extraordinary? Jesus speaks to you, And he wants to remind you of something that can completely change the way you face this time of waiting. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean God is absent. Heaven works in silence, and some of the greatest promises are made in the dark. Anna didn't know it, but what was about to be born through her wasn't just a son, it was a prophet. Samuel would be the one who would anoint kings, who would hear God's voice clearly in times of confusion. Anna's womb, which seemed forgotten, would be an instrument of God's will over a nation. And yours can be too, but there is a secret in this process. Anna did not hold on to the pain. She handed it over, with all your weakness, with all your humanity. And when the priest Eli saw Hannah praying in silence, he thought she was drunk. Because those who pray with a torn heart don't care about appearance. She cares about being heard by God. And that's exactly what happened. The Lord heard, and he responded, not immediately, but in a precise way, because when God acts, he doesn't delay. He aligns, it prepares the environment. He transforms the invisible before manifesting the visible. Have you ever gotten to the point where you pray while crying without saying a word? Where all that comes out are sighs and tears? Know this type of prayer has the right address. Go straight to the throne of grace. Anna left that moment of prayer with a different face. Not because she already had what she asked for, but because she trusted the one who promised. There is a peace that comes before the answer, a lightness that arrives when the burden is completely handed over. Anna teaches us that faith is not about denying pain. It's about continuing to trust even when everything seems contrary. If this message is touching your heart, write in the comments, "Even though I wait, I trust in Jesus." Your statement could be the spark of hope someone needs today. Because you are not alone in this wait. God sees, God listens, and his timing never fails. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. The crowd pressed around, screams, agitation, confusion. And in the midst of all this, a distressed father, with red eyes from so many sleepless nights, trying to find in Jesus the last hope for his son. His boy, so full of life before, was now a prisoner of violent convulsions and desperate cries. That man's pain wasn't just in the arms that held his son's body, it was in the soul. With each failed attempt at healing, with each unanswered prayer, a piece of his faith was shattered. When he finally encounters Jesus, he does not bring words of theology or well-crafted arguments. He only says, "If you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." Mark 9:22. And it is then that Jesus confronts him with something he did not expect. If you can, everything is possible for him who believes. At that moment, the Father's heart breaks and he confesses his weakness. "I believe. Help me in my lack of faith." Mark 9:24. An imperfect but sincere prayer, a trembling but living faith. Jesus speaks to you, and he wants to remind you that he doesn't require perfect faith from you, just a willing heart. How many times have you felt this way? Struggling to keep believing, even when everything around tells you to give up? When faith seems too weak, too small, too unstable? You pray, but without the same conviction. You want to believe, but you are afraid of being disappointed again. This father represents so many of us, tired, broken, but still holding on to hope. And here's the key to this story. Jesus doesn't reject weak faith. He responds to true faith, even if imperfect. This is one of the most powerful truths you need to keep. Jesus responds to those who cry sincerely, not to those who appear perfect. The miracle that happened to that man's son was not based on correct theology, nor on beautiful words. It was activated by an honest outcry, a soul that, even trembling, chose to continue believing. And that's what may be missing in your walk. Stop trying to appear strong before God and simply be true. Jesus does not move away from his doubt. He approaches her as if to say, "This is where I wanted to meet you." What if you stopped right now, closed your eyes and said exactly how you feel? Even if it's something like, "Lord, I want to believe, but I'm tired. Help me to believe again." This is faith. This is surrender. That's the kind of prayer that moves heaven. There is no place in the Bible where Jesus ignored anyone who came to him in sincerity. On the contrary, those who most impressed Jesus were not those who knew everything, but those who, despite everything going against them, still decided to believe. If this word spoke to your heart, comment now, "Lord, help me to trust again," because your comment could be the beginning of the restoration of another faith as well. There are people who will identify with your vulnerability and find the strength to continue, but that's not all. There is a deep detail in this story that many ignore. Before the miracle happens, Jesus asks his father how long the boy had been suffering. He wanted to hear. He wanted to connect with the pain. This reveals that before healing, Jesus listens. He is not a hurried God. He cares about the details of your fight. That changes everything, doesn't it? Knowing that heaven is interested in what you have to say, that your suffering is not invisible, that your pain is not ignored. Jesus speaks to you, even when you don't feel it, even when you think you don't have enough faith, even when prayer is weak, he continues to listen. And more than that, he responds, not because you deserve it, but because he loves you, because you are a son. Because like that father, you may be falling apart inside, but you can still say, "Help me." And that's enough. That father left there with his son cured. But more than that, he left with his faith restored. And here comes the most impressive part of this story. The desert was dry, silent, vast. Nothing moved, apart from the dust that the wind gradually raised. In it, an old man walked with the marks of loneliness imprinted on his face and body. It was Moses. For decades, he lived away from Egypt's spotlight, away from the palaces, away from the purpose that once seemed so grand. Now, he lived taking care of sheep that weren't even his. Forgotten, isolated, almost unrecognizable even to himself. It was in this scenario of absence of meaning that God decided to appear. A bush was burning with flames, but was not consumed. And a voice echoed from what seemed unlikely, "Take off your sandals, for the place you are on is holy ground." Exodus 3:5. What God was saying there was profound. Moses, the ground of your pain can be the starting point for your calling. Jesus speaks to you. Maybe you are in exactly that place, not physically in the desert, but at a time in your life when everything seems directionless. You look around and see no fruit. You look back and you no longer see who you used to be. And when you try to look ahead, everything seems hazy. Have you ever asked yourself, "God, why am I still here?" Or worse, has the Lord forgotten me? The absence of purpose is a heavy burden. When life comes down to survival, when the days are just repetitions of obligations, the heart begins to dry up inside. But that's precisely where the sky moves. What is about to happen will change the way you understand your waiting periods. God did not appear to Moses when he was at his peak, but at his most neutral, and therein lies a hidden truth. Your desert is not a punishment, it is a preparation. The silence that today seems empty is echoing in the sky, like the sound of its stoning. The time you think you are forgotten is actually the time God is forging your spirit. Because before giving you the purpose, he works on who you need to be to carry it. Moses had to take off his sandals. It wasn't just any symbolic gesture. It was an invitation to vulnerability. By stepping barefoot on the hot earth, he disarmed himself. He left behind the protection of his routine, his comfort zone, his excuses. And perhaps today, Jesus is asking you the same thing. Take off your sandals. Get rid of fear, self-protection, comparisons, the belief that you are too small to be used by God. He's not waiting for you to become perfect before calling you. He's calling you now just the way you are. Have you ever felt like your pain is so great that it can only be an end? What if it's the beginning? What if the ground that burns your feet today is the same one where God wants to plant an eternal mission? Moses thought the time had passed, that the mistake of the past disqualified him forever. But God does not see as the world sees. He doesn't choose based on what the eyes see. He chooses based on what his heart carries. And if you've come this far with tears and marks, it's a sign that you resisted. You're still standing, and that already qualifies you. Because Jesus uses those who did not give up, even without understanding the reason for their journey. If this message spoke to your heart, comment now. Jesus, reveal your purpose in me. Your comment may awaken others who are also in the middle of the desert and don't know that they are one step away from the call. Sometimes the only difference between emptiness and rebirth is the awareness that God is still present. And He is. The I Am still calls, still sends, still trusts. And here comes the most surprising part of all this. Moses tried to resist. He said, "Who am I to go to Pharaoh?" He thought he needed to be someone relevant to accomplish something great. But God answered simply, "I will be with you." Exodus 3:12. This changes everything. Because purpose does not depend on your strength, your reputation, or your clarity. It depends on presence. And Jesus promised to be with you. So even though everything still seems confusing, know this: the purpose is already in motion. You have not been forgotten. It was separated. And maybe this is the exact moment when the bush starts to burn before your eyes. It all started in chaos. The world was formless and empty, and darkness covered the face of the abyss. Nothing made sense. There was no direction, no structure, no peace, just confusion. The entire creation at that moment was a reflection of what many hearts live inside today. A nameless void, an unexplained anguish. Everything seemed lost until a voice broke the silence. The first order in the history of humanity was not to build something, but to face what was disordered. Let there be light. Genesis 1:3. And there was light. That's how it all started, with one word, not with force, not with control, with the word. Because when God speaks, even chaos obeys. Jesus speaks to you. He speaks now, at this very moment, in the language of his pain, his internal disorganization, the mess that no one sees. You may be facing a time when everything seems disconnected, where your life has become a puzzle whose pieces no longer fit together. Maybe your routine is full, but your soul is empty. It may be that on the outside, everything is standing, but inside, everything is crumbling. And that's exactly where Jesus comes in. Not when you have everything figured out, but while everything still seems confusing, because it was in the midst of chaos that he decided to begin creation. And it is also in the midst of your chaos that he wants to begin a transformation. There is a secret hidden in this story, and few know this truth. God's order does not depend on the order of the environment. His word is sovereign over chaos. While the world would wait for the environment to stabilize before acting, God acts in the midst of instability. This means you don't have to wait for everything to get better to see the light. The light comes first. Clarity comes before change. The presence of God does not wait for your life to be organized. It is precisely what brings organization to it. And perhaps what is needed today is not more effort. It is complete surrender. A cry in the dark saying, "Lord, speak to me. Create something new within me." Think about it. When God said, "Let there be light," he didn't erase the darkness. He surpassed her. And that's what he wants to do with you. Anxiety, fear, emotional pain, loneliness, all of this doesn't need to disappear for the light to shine. Light shines in the midst of darkness and wins. Because where Jesus enters, darkness cannot resist. Do you feel this now? That presence that calms your heart, that aligns your thoughts, that brings relief even without explanation. This is the light of Christ cutting through your chaos. And she didn't come to shine for a moment. She came to create something new. If this message touched your heart, click the like button so that others can also be blessed. It may seem like a simple gesture, but your click could be the "let there be light" that someone needs to come out of the darkness. And if you feel like you need God to bring order to your inner world, comment now, "Let there be light in me." Don't hold it inside. Declare. Release. Break the silence. Because the light you declare in faith can be the beginning of the recreation that heaven has prepared for you. And here comes the most impressive part of this story. God didn't create everything in one day. He could, but he chose the process. Each word created a new stage. Each phase had a purpose. And perhaps today, he is saying to your heart, you are on day one. It doesn't seem ready yet. It's still dark. But something has already been released. The light is already moving. And where there is light, there is promise. And where there is promise, there is rebirth. Jesus speaks to you, and when he speaks, everything changes. Even chaos obeys. She was dragged. With my hair messy, my heart racing and my eyes fixed on the ground, I didn't know whether to look at the faces full of hate or at the stones they were holding. Every step the others took toward him felt like a death decree, a public sentence. It was the woman caught in adultery. She knew what she had done. I knew the weight of the error, but what hurt most wasn't the sin. It was the shame, the condemnation, the feeling that she was no longer worth anything. The silence of everyone there screamed something that many of us have felt in moments of failure. You don't deserve forgiveness. And perhaps you have also been led to believe that some mistakes are unforgivable, that there are marks so deep that not even God can erase them, that there are choices that take you off course, that take you away from love, grace, presence, maybe not with stones in their hands, but with looks, words, or even contempt. Others have made you believe that your failure defines who you are. But Jesus speaks to you, yes, right now, when you feel most distant from him. Because on that day, in the midst of moral chaos, in the epicenter of guilt, Jesus did not say what everyone expected to hear. He didn't humiliate her. He didn't condemn her, and he didn't ignore what happened either. He ducked, he wrote on the floor, and after dismantling one by one the accusers with a simple phrase, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her," he stood up and looked at her, not with judgment, but with compassion, with eyes that restore, with a presence that heals. And then came the phrase that redefined not just that moment, but her story. "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." John 8:11. This phrase is not just for that woman. It's for me, it's for you. It is for anyone who carries the weight of a guilt that seems eternal. Jesus speaks to you, and he is saying, "I see you beyond your fall." He sees your pain, yes, but he also sees your repentance, see your desire to change, see the tears you shed alone when no one else was around. And most of all, he sees who you can still be, not bound by error, but free by grace. There is a secret hidden in this story, and few know this truth. The biggest accusation doesn't come from outside. It comes from within, because often the stones that hurt us the most are the ones we carry ourselves. The shame that doesn't go away, the repeated thought that I don't deserve to start over again. But listen, Jesus is not waiting for you to be perfect to love you. He already loves you now. He's already reaching out to you. His grace does not come after repentance. It is what leads you to him. And this grace covers what you think is unforgivable. Yes, even that. Until that mistake, even things you never told anyone. If this message spoke to your heart, comment now, "Jesus is my hope." And if you know someone who also needs to hear this, who thinks they are too far from God, send them this video. You can be the instrument he uses to lift someone up today. Your comment could be the encouragement someone needs today, because when you write, when you declare, something moves spiritually. You are not alone, and remember, Jesus didn't say, "I forgive you because you deserve it." He said, "Neither do I condemn you." That's grace. Undeserved love, unexpected release. You are not your mistake. You are the target of love that has no end. Jesus speaks to you, and his voice, when it echoes over guilt, carries no weight. Brings liberation, because where there is sincere repentance, there is a fresh start. There is new life, there is freedom, and there is a God who, instead of leaving you on the ground, lifts you up with eyes full of love and says, "Go, walk in freedom. I still have beautiful plans for you." She was dragged. With my hair messy, my heart racing and my eyes fixed on the ground, I didn't know whether to look at the faces full of hate or at the stones they were holding. Every step the others took toward him felt like a death decree, a public sentence. It was the woman caught in adultery. She knew what she had done. I knew the weight of the error, but what hurt most wasn't the sin. It was the shame, the condemnation, the feeling that she was no longer worth anything. The silence of everyone there screamed something that many of us have felt in moments of failure. You don't deserve forgiveness. And perhaps you have also been led to believe that some mistakes are unforgivable, that there are marks so deep that not even God can erase them, that there are choices that take you off course, that take you away from love, grace, presence, maybe not with stones in their hands, but with looks, words, or even contempt. Others have made you believe that your failure defines who you are. But Jesus speaks to you, yes, right now, when you feel most distant from him. Because on that day, in the midst of moral chaos, in the epicenter of guilt, Jesus did not say what everyone expected to hear. He didn't humiliate her. He didn't condemn her, and he didn't ignore what happened either. He ducked, he wrote on the floor, and after dismantling one by one the accusers with a simple phrase, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her," he stood up and looked at her, not with judgment, but with compassion, with eyes that restore, with a presence that heals. And then came the phrase that redefined not just that moment, but her story. "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." John 8:11. This phrase is not just for that woman. It's for me. It's for you. It is for anyone who carries the weight of a guilt that seems eternal. Jesus speaks to you, and he is saying, "I see you beyond your fall." He sees your pain, yes, but he also sees your repentance, see your desire to change, see the tears you shed alone when no one else was around. And most of all, he sees who you can still be, not bound by error, but free by grace. There is a secret hidden in this story, and few know this truth. The biggest accusation doesn't come from outside. It comes from within, because often the stones that hurt us the most are the ones we carry ourselves. The shame that doesn't go away, the repeated thought that I don't deserve to start over again. But listen, Jesus is not waiting for you to be perfect to love you. He already loves you now. He's already reaching out to you. His grace does not come after repentance. It is what leads you to him. And this grace covers what you think is unforgivable. Yes, even that. Until that mistake, even things you never told anyone. If this message spoke to your heart, comment now, "Jesus is my hope." And if you know someone who also needs to hear this, who thinks they are too far from God, send them this video. You can be the instrument he uses to lift someone up today. Your comment could be the encouragement someone needs today, because when you write, when you declare, something moves spiritually. You are not alone, and remember, Jesus didn't say, "I forgive you because you deserve it." He said, "Neither do I condemn you." That's grace. Undeserved love, unexpected release. You are not your mistake. You are the target of love that has no end. Jesus speaks to you, and his voice, when it echoes over guilt, carries no weight. Brings liberation, because where there is sincere repentance, there is a fresh start. There is new life, there is freedom, and there is a God who, instead of leaving you on the ground, lifts you up with eyes full of love and says, "Go, walk in freedom. I still have beautiful plans for you." If you've come this far, you know how intense this journey has been. Every pain revealed, every wound exposed, every tear contained. All of this was not in vain. Because Jesus speaks to you, and he spoke in the silence of your thoughts, in the memories that cut you inside, in the words that touch the most hidden parts of your heart. Maybe you realize something today that you've been trying to ignore for years. Maybe in the middle of the video, you felt your chest tighten, your breath was short, your eyes watered. This is the Holy Spirit awakening what was already dead inside you. The hope, forgiveness, The chance to start over, everything that seemed distant, is now within your reach. Today you understood that there are wounds that time cannot heal, but that Jesus touches, that there are prisons that cannot be seen, but that he can break, that there is chaos within us, but he still has the power to say, "Let there be light," and transform everything. You have discovered that the place of your greatest pain can be exactly the point where God will begin your greatest liberation. And that changes everything. You are not alone in this. It is not forgotten. You are loved, desired, and sought after by heaven. And if there is one thing Jesus wants you to take with you now, it is this non-negotiable truth: you can still be free. Take a deep breath, allow yourself to feel this message, because now we are going to pray. Not just to end this video, but to seal into the spiritual world everything that has been broken, healed, and restored here. And if you can, if you're in a quiet place, close your eyes. Imagine Jesus approaching you, without haste, without condemnation, just with love, with grace, with healing in hands. Let's pray together. Lord Jesus, I place before you every heart that has come this far, every tired soul, every overloaded mind, every spirit that no longer knows how to cry out. May your presence now invade this environment, this room, this soul. Free, Jesus, restore what was broken, heals what seemed incurable. Erase with your love the marks left by years of rejection, guilt, fear, and loneliness. We give you the wounds that no one sees, because we know that your touch is the only one that heals completely. May every lie of the enemy be silenced now. May every voice of condemnation be silent. And may your voice, sweet and firm, be heard. I do not condemn you. Go and live in freedom. Lord, may this be the time for a fresh start. May this video not be just another content, but the milestone of a new time with the Lord. In the name of Jesus, amen. If you've come this far, it's because God is working in your life. This is no coincidence, it's purpose. It is divine plan. And now that you've prayed, don't stop here. Why? What you will discover in the video that is on screen now could change your life even more. Don't leave without watching, because what comes next could be what's needed for your release. Comment now, "I made it to the end." This will show that you are part of this community that is being transformed by Jesus. Share this message with someone who needs it. You can be the bridge between someone's pain and the voice of Jesus. And subscribe to the channel, not as a simple click, but as a commitment to your spiritual journey. Because here, every word, every video is a seed from heaven to your heart. And when you sign up, you're saying, "I want to keep hearing Jesus speak to me." And to seal all of this, receive this promise as a seal on your soul. "And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." John 8:32. Jesus speaks to you. And he's not finished yet. Go now to the next video, Why Your Healing Continues.